So again, the Phrygian mode is the third mode of the major scale, all right? We've been using C major for a lot of these modal conversations, so we're going to stick with that. So the third note of the C major scale. First of all, here's the good old C major scale for you. The good old do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, key of C. The third note of the scale is E. So when we play the C major scale starting on E and ending on E, that gives us the Phrygian mode. Here it is an octave lower, starting on the low E. The modes are classified as either being major sounding or minor sounding. That all depends on the third note of the mode in question, all right? Phrygian is a minor sounding mode, all right? Here it is one more time. The beginning of it, okay? 1, 2, 3, okay? Minor, third, okay? So since that is an E to G, you know, which is present in an E minor chord and an E minor scale, that's a minor third. So Phrygian, because of that, is considered to be a minor sounding mode. If it had a major third interval between the first note and the third note, okay, then it would be a major sounding mode like Mixolydian or Lydian. But Phrygian is definitely a darker minor sounding mode. Now, all of the modes have, well, except for major and minor, I've heard it taught that modes have a characteristic note, a note that separates them from either the major scale or the minor scale, a note that kind of sets them apart from one of those two scales. Because most major sounding modes are compared to the major scale, and most minor sounding modes are compared to the minor scale, or Aeolian, which is its modal name. All right, so the Phrygian mode has a half step between the root and the second note. Okay, this is also called a minor second interval. You may have heard that term before. And that minor second interval is actually the interval that differentiates it from Aeolian, or the E minor scale. Here's the E minor scale that you probably already know. Okay, the very common. Now here's Phrygian. All right, that second note is a half step lower than the traditional second note of the minor scale. So a lot of people consider that second note to be the characteristic note of Phrygian, all right, the flat 2, which is what kind of gives it that dark, kind of sinister sound, all right? It's very popular in metal, it's very popular in flamenco music. It's just got a real dark kind of minor sound, which makes it really useful if that's what you're going for. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put on a backing track and just sort of play along and kind of give you an idea. This backing track, by the way, is going to be primarily an E minor chord, all right? But I'm also going to go back and forth between E minor, and occasionally I'm going to hit an F major chord. F major is the 4 chord in the key of C. Again, this mode is derived from the C major scale. Just to kind of give you that E to F kind of relationship, which is really what Phrygian is, you know, widely used for. Now, another thing before I turn on the backing track, I just want to remind you that the mode and the chord go together, all right? The diatonic mode and the diatonic chord, you know, are used to complement one another, and the scale is often played over the diatonic chord, okay? Now, just to give you an example, the C major, okay, is played over the C major chord. I have full-on distortion right now, but, all right, there's kind of the C major chord played with a little bit of distortion. All right, so again, the C major scale is played over the C major chord. Since E Phrygian is the third mode in the key of C, we use it to play over the third chord in the key of C, all right, which is E minor. All right, so that would be the most suggested application for E Phrygian, would be over the E minor chord. All right, now again, it works really well in conjunction with F major because of that half step between the first and second notes of the scale. So again, this backing track I'm about to play is primarily E minor, but it does occasionally go to F major, just to kind of really highlight that relationship. So again, that's the E minor chord, the E minor arpeggio, and we get that just by playing the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale. That will give you the diatonic chord. So some people might practice Phrygian like this. First the scale and then the chord, just to get, you know, the sound of both of them into the ear. All right. So at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and put on this backing track and just play along. I'll probably talk a little bit as I play. So here it is. Now, what I was trying to do there, and what I recommend that you try to do as well, is to really aim for the chord tones, all right? Aim for E, G, and B, all right? When you're playing over the E minor chord, the chord tones are the strongest notes, okay? They're the strongest notes in the scale. They're the notes that you can really connect the strongest to the chord with. So those are kind of the notes that you should target. You always hear jazz teachers talking about targeting notes, okay? Targeting chord tones. And that's what you can do. You can use the other notes on the scale as passing tones. For example, chord tone, passing tone F, chord tone G, passing tone A, chord tone B, passing tone C. Now the seventh note of the chord could also be a chord tone if we're using a 4-note seventh chord, which would be E minor seventh, all right? If we're talking just about a 3-note triad, then you could consider C and D both to be passing tones on your way back up to E, which is the root in the next octave. I definitely consider the seventh to be a chord tone, all right? I just am used to thinking about it that way. So those are the notes that you want to give the most emphasis, the most weight, if you want to look at it that way. You want to aim for those notes when you're playing. Now again, we go to a quick F chord in this progression. So you may hear a little bit of this. Again, aiming for the F chord tones, which are F, skip G, A, skip B, and C, all right? Or if you want to include the seventh, F, skip G, A, skip B, C, skip D, E, which gives you F major 7. Again, these are all diatonic arpeggios, which we've talked about in previous lessons, so if you need to freshen up on that, go back and check out some of those lessons. So anyway, Phrygian is the third mode of the major scale, okay? E Phrygian is the third mode of the C major scale, since E is the third note of the C major scale, all right? And you could also consider Phrygian to be the minor scale, Aeolian, that also has a flatted 2, a flatted second note. All right, that's what we call the characteristic note, the note that really gives Phrygian its dark minor sound.